what's up, guys? Welcome back to Guys at Magic. This is Hunter and Steven. Say what up, Steven.
What up, Steven?
We are back doing the bigger, the badder, the scarier version of the Counter Blitz upgrade. This is the $300 upgrade to this deck from Final Fantasy, helmed by Tidus, Yuna's Guardian. I'm very excited to see what you've done with this bigger budget, but we've already seen what you've done with the 100. This is a continuation, so if you haven't already seen that $100 upgrade, check the description for that link. Check it out. Come right back over here. But also, this is Tidus, like I said. If you wanted to see the backup $300 upgrade of Yuna, check the link in the description for our Patreon to check it out early. Otherwise, stay here, and it will be here in a couple of weeks. But like I said, Steven, this is Tidus. I'm very excited to see what you've done. Just as a reminder, tell everybody what Tidus does and kind of the direction of the deck you're making it.
Yeah, Tidus, Yuna's Guardian. So this is a green, white, and blue for a 3/3 legendary creature human warrior. It says at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from a target creature you control onto a second target creature you control. It also has cheer, which is exciting. Whenever one or more creatures you control with a counter on them deal combat damage to a player, you may draw a card and proliferate. Do this only once each turn. So essentially, we're just putting counters on a bunch of stuff, making them huge, and swinging for some very aggressive damage. So really, for this deck, I kind of based my building around proliferation, making sure we're getting as many +1/+1 counters as we possibly can, and then also drawing a bunch of cards to continue doing things like killing our opponents.
Yeah, and this specifically doesn't necessarily say +1/+1 counters, and I know you threw in a couple other different
Yeah.
counters. And hey, card draw stapled onto a commander is always a welcome thing, right?
Yeah, card draw on a commander that is at 3 mana. I mean, I'm just on my sweet spot here. And just like you said, I mean, it doesn't have to be +1/+1 counters. In this deck, there's a bunch of manipulation you can do when it comes to like flying counters and some other fun stuff, which we'll get into a little later in the video.
Okay, well, Steven, without further ado, let's get into these additions. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Today's video is sponsored by Evoke the Art and their new Gradient Craft token series. This token set features 50 high-quality tokens in some stunning gradient art style, featuring some original art, free of any AI-generated designs, ensuring authentic and unique visuals, designed for players who appreciate both function and aesthetics. These will bring a vibrant and distinct look to your battlefield. Head over to zaxxmasstudios.etsy.com for more information on picking up these and more tokens. The link will be in the description. We got a special gift for all of our Guys That Magic fans. Use the code WhatsUpNerds at checkout to get 10% off your order and get this awesome Guys That Magic treasure token. Huge thanks to all of our friends over at Evoke the Art. Now let's get back to the video.
All right, we are back. Steven, let's go ahead and get into the additions now. But first, everything that is being thrown on screen is these ads from the $100 upgrade that are staying the same, correct?
Yes, they are staying the same. They were added to the deck for a reason, and they're going to stay here for those same reasons. Go watch that video, find out why.
Yeah, perfect. Go check it out. But like I said in the beginning, this is the bigger, the better, the crazier version of this deck. Let's start getting into these additions, starting with some creatures.
Yeah, let's talk about Bill. Bristly Bill, big and bad, Spine Sower. We got 1 and a green. It's a 2/2. It says it has landfall, and then whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. For 3 and 2 green, you can double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So we're technically not a landfall deck, but we're playing Magic, and guess what we're doing throughout some turns? We're going to go ahead and play some lands. And even if you don't have lands and you get Bristly Bill in the late game, you can pay the 5 mana, double the plethora of counters you're going to definitely have, and just really hurt some people.
Yeah, you definitely will. Bristly Bill has been slowly one of my favorite cards since it's been printed at Thunder Junction. I am the +1/+1 counter person, so this is an all-star.
Yeah, plus this coming down at 2 mana, if you get this in your opening hand or in the early game, this is just going to make doing the thing a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to another fun one, Metastatic Evangel. This is 1 and a white for a 3/1. It says whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, proliferate. Again, we want to get as many +1/+1 counters or whatever kind of counters we got going on at that time onto our stuff, and this is going to help us drastically. We're not really a token style deck, although we may have 1 or 2 here and there. So just basically for playing and casting our creatures, we get to do some fun stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I can see you also proliferating some other counter on a person, if you will.
This is true. And then let's move on to a fun combat trick. You know me, I talk about it all the time. I love funny little combat tricks. So we have Slippery Bog Bonder. This is 3 and a green for a 3/3. It has flash and hexproof. It also says whenever it enters the battlefield, put a hexproof counter on target creature, then move any number of counters from among creatures you control onto that creature. So some really fun things you can do with this. You can either hold this up to give something hexproof if you really want to, or if you're swinging and your opponent declares no blocks and you're swinging just a little creature, but you have all these huge creatures with a bunch of counters, you can then just go ahead, move all those counters over, give the creature hexproof, and then just absolutely demolish them.
Yeah, pretty nuts. Slippery Bonder is pretty good because you can also just proliferate those hexproof counters too, and then your commander moves those hexproof counters around. So, hey, just give your team hexproof eventually.
I mean, you're not wrong. Just proliferate those counters. Just don't target my stuff. I mean, it's not that hard.
No. Moving on, we've got one instant, it looks like.
Yeah, so let's move on to a instant, which is really fun and amazing. So essentially, I have found that when you become a threat and you have a huge board, people tend to do stuff and want to do stuff to your board. So Teferi's Protection is sliding into this deck now. This is 2 and a white. It says, until your next turn, your life total can't change and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out, and then you exile Teferi's Protection, because obviously if you can recur this, it'd be very aggressive.
Yeah, the best protection spell in Magic, in my opinion. Teferi's Protection. Don't touch my stuff.
Don't touch me.
Exactly.
Stop. This is my no-no square.
But moving on, I see some lovable artifacts.
Yeah, let's move on to why this deck is expensive. So we'll start with the smaller ones and we'll work our way up. First up, we have Agent's Toolkit. This is 1, a green and a blue. It's an artifact clue, funny enough. As it enters the battlefield, it enters with a +1/+1 counter, a flying counter, a death touch counter, and a shield counter on it. And then whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may move a counter from Agent's Toolkit onto that creature. You can also pay to sacrifice to draw a card. So with Tidus being able to move stuff around, even if we don't have a creature entering the battlefield that turn and we just move to combat, we can just go ahead and move whatever we need at that moment onto a creature.
Yeah. And then with your proliferation, you can continue to just make these, just like have this Agent's Toolkit continuously give you these counters.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. And just be forewarned, shield counters will not protect you from exile effects. I learned this the hard way.
Yeah, it's true. But you can block and be okay.
This is true. You can block and you can definitely be okay. Speaking of being okay, let's go ahead and talk about Ozolith the Shattered Spire. This is 1 and a green. It says if 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a artifact or creature you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead. You can also pay 1 and a green, tap it, put a +1/+1 counter on target artifact or creature you control, activate only as a sorcery, and then it has cycling 2. We're never cycling this away, let's be honest, so that's flavor text there at the bottom. But the reason why I really like this card is A, it comes down super cheap. B, if board wipe happens, you don't really have anything going on, and the only thing you can do is cast Tidus. It's unfortunate because if you don't have any other effects on board to give your creatures +1/+1s, then you're kind of in a hard spot. So being able to have this on the field, you're putting that +1/+1, which is technically 2. That way you can start rolling the train again and start getting things going.
Yeah, Oz of the Shattered Spire. Easy include into a +1/+1 counter deck. But it is a sequel to the original, which we are about to talk about.
Yes, we are about to talk about it. So just like I was saying, if your stuff leaves the battlefield, your opponents actually do the thing and stop you. The Ozolith is here to protect you. So for 1 mana, 1 little mana, which is crazy to think this card is 1 mana. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all counters from the Ozolith onto target creature. My big stuff goes away, puts all the counters on this. Ozolith becomes big. Play creature, big again. That's so good.
Forever counters. That's the Ozolith in a nutshell. Counters,
forever counters.
Counters just do not go away. Love this card.
They're not wrong. You know what else isn't going to go away? My love for this next card, the Great Henge. This is 7 and 2 green. You're never going to pay that, especially in this deck. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. You can tap it to add 2 green, you gain 2 life, and then whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. This is just fantastic. Obviously, helps us with a little life gain. We got some ramp with the mana. So essentially, the 2 mana we're probably going to pay for this just fixes itself right there. And it puts +1/+1 counters on our creatures. And we get to draw a card. Where's the bad?
There is no bad. This card is strictly just, hey, did you want to do the thing? Here it is in 1 card.
Do it.
Exactly.
Do it
I
all.
love the Great Henge. Great additions here, Steven.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and move on to 1 enchantment, however. Talk to me about this one.
Yeah, so kind of a wonky include. I know everyone's like, as foretold, what's that? I run this in my enchantment deck that is helmed by Goshintai, and it's always really fun. So when I thought about maybe proliferating some stuff, I thought this would be fun as well. So as foretold, 2 and a blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a time counter on as foretold. Then once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast with mana value X or less, where X is the number of time counters on as foretold. So obviously, really fun tech here. We are proliferating in this deck quite a bit. So if we can proliferate those time counters, we can play stuff for free. And that is the name of the game. The cheaper the stuff is that we cast, the more stuff we can do in the game with our actual mana, and we can just continue to just roll over our opponents.
Yeah, free spells are never bad.
No, free spells are great.
That looks like all of your spells of the deck. It's time to make the changes to the land department. We've seen they're kind of wonky, clunky. Talk to me about what we're adding.
Yeah, let's move on to the land department. So I added the pathway for green and white, so branch loft pathway or boulder loft pathway. This deck's color pie is primarily green, and then the next most is going to be white. So I kind of wanted to make sure I could hit those land drops for those colors. And then I added all the verges. I told you guys in the last video, I wanted to throw them in, just kind of wanted to have a little bit of a bigger budget. So here we are. Flood Farm Verge, Hushwood Verge, and then Willow Rush Verge are all making their way to the deck. Flood Farm Verge is going to tap for a white. If you control a plains or an island, it'll also tap for a blue. Hushwood will tap for a green, but if you control a forest or a plains, it'll tap for a white. And then Willow Rush is going to tap for a blue, but if you control a forest or an island, it'll tap for a green. These are great lands. Most of the time, you don't really have to worry about tapping for the extra mana that's on these cards. Just having that ability to have a fast land like this that doesn't come in tapped, and then eventually, if not already immediately, being able to tap for some extra is going to be beneficial for us.
Yeah, it's good color fixing. Ever since they've printed these lands, I am here for them. So Verge lands, great additions.
Yeah, I pretty much have been throwing these in almost every single one of my decks. It's just been really nice to have that color fixing, like you were mentioning.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. But Steven, is that it? Is that all the additions for this $300 upgrade?
Those are going to be all the additions.
All right, Steven. Well, let's go ahead and get into the sad part. That is the part where we are taking a beloved franchise and we're going to have to dissect it a bit to make room for these brand new cards. But before we talk about the new cuts, everything on the screen right now, you are keeping the same cuts from the $100 upgrade, correct?
Gone, gone, gone. Never to return again unless I build a Final Fantasy deck that's strictly Final Fantasy.
All right. It's fair enough. But speaking of Final Fantasy and cuts, what are these ones we're cutting?
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and talk about the creatures first. We have Generous Patron. This is 2 and a green. It says whenever this creature enters, support 2. If you don't remember what support does, basically it is put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 other target creatures. And then this also says whenever you put 1 or more counters on a creature you don't control, draw a card. So we can draw at least 2 cards with this, which is really fun. But then we're putting counters on our opponent's things. Don't get me wrong. I love Commander Politics more than the next person probably. But I have found that sometimes it backfires pretty hard. So just be careful. But yeah, for that reason, I kind of did not want Generous Patron in the deck. Plus, we added so much extra card draw that we didn't really need this one.
Yeah, this card's not good in my opinion. I don't like helping my opponent, and I'm not trying to get card draw by giving my opponent a bigger creature to beat me down with. So, no thanks.
Next up, I'm kind of sad to get rid of this card. This is Rampant Rejuvenator. This is 3 and a green. It says this creature enters with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and then whenever this creature dies, search your library for up to X basic land cards where X is this creature's power. Put them on the battlefield, then shuffle. I love this card. I think this card is amazing. My biggest issue with this card is exile. If it dies, great. If it's exiled, you basically feel like crap. Uh, Plus, to be honest with you, there are only 9 basics in this deck. Granted, we are in a 100 deck format, so we might be able to find maybe 5, 6, 7 at tops. We'll probably have a lot of them on the field already. But when this gets exiled, you feel really bad. It does hurt. So for that reason, out of the deck.
Yeah, a 4-mana 2/2. Not great.
Yeah, most of the time this will enter with way more counters on it. But for the floor that we always talk about, you are getting 2 basics at that point. But moving on to Scholar of New Horizons, this is 1 and a white. It says this creature enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. You can tap it, remove a counter from a permanent you control, search your library for a plains card, and reveal it. If an opponent controls more lands than you, you may put that card onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't put that card on the battlefield, put it into your hand and shuffle. This is good. It's a nice little ramp. It's fantastic. It's just a really slow card. We added some ramp in the $100 deck, and then we also have a bunch of cards in our deck that essentially tap for mana, and I'd rather do that. And the last creature we're removing is going to be Summon Velfer. This is 4 and a blue, pretty expensive. And then it says also, it's got a bunch of chapters. First chapter, Sonic Wings. Each opponent chooses a creature with the greatest mana value among creatures they control. Return those creatures to their owner's hands. That's all right, I guess. The next 3 chapters are going to say tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. I love the idea of putting stun counters on stuff and then also proliferating those stun counters with Tidus. Be very careful because most of the time, at least when I play Magic, I'm only concentrated on my board. My opponents also have stuff, and if there's a stun counter on their stuff, they're going to stay quiet. They're not going to tell you there's a stun counter that you could proliferate because they don't want that to happen. But this card is kind of cool, but it's just 5 mana and it's pretty expensive. So I kind of wanted to make my game move a little bit faster, and that's kind of why I cut it. You do have to wait a little while. It's only tapping 1 creature a turn. So you're just kind of like, all right, cool, let's get the ball rolling.
Yeah, all these creatures, you've got good reasonings to take them out. They just don't fit in the build anymore, so just remove them.
They're gone. They're gone.
All right, those look like the only creatures. Let's move into some non-permanent spells. A couple of sorceries, an instant. What do we got?
Yeah, so this deck came with 3 board wipes essentially, so I wanted to kind of thin that down a little bit. Promise of Loyalty is the one that I wasn't really a huge fan of. So 4 and a white, each player puts a vow counter on a creature they control and sacrifices the rest. Each of those creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control for as long as it has a vow counter on it. Even if we want to proliferate those vow counters, Tidus is only caring about putting stuff on our creatures. We can't really do anything on our opponent's creatures. So it doesn't really help us out too much. Plus, if I want a board wipe, I want a board wipe. I'm not trying to keep stuff around, even if it can't attack us.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting politic kind of card because most of the time, all of your opponents are going to be keeping their best thing, and they're probably going to beat each other up with their best thing since they can't attack you. But who knows what they can do with it later. So, Promise of Loyalty.
Exactly.
Cool card, just not a full board wipe.
Yeah. Moving on to Yuna's Decision. This is 3 and a green. It's got 2 little modes you can choose. You can choose 1. Continue the Pilgrimage. Sacrifice a creature. If you do draw a card, then you may put a creature card and or land card from your hand onto the battlefield, and then find another way. Return 1 or 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Fun card. Sorcery speed's pretty slow. This is also 4 mana, so it's pretty expensive. I think that we're going to be okay in this deck. There's some other cards that do the recursion thing a little bit better and cheaper. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of Yuna's Decision.
Yeah, Yuna's Decision is a very interesting decision. Kind of a weird sacrifice mono green card. Kind of breaks the color pie just a bit. But I can see why you're removing it. It's just not as powerful as what you threw in.
Yeah, I mean, if it had like a mode where you could choose both, I think I may keep it in just because the flexibility's there, but only one. Poo-poo, bye-bye. And then lastly, the instant we talked about earlier, so Endless Detour. This is a green, a white, and a blue. It says the owner of target spell, non-land permanent, or card in a graveyard puts it on their choice of the top or bottom of their library. This card's kind of cool. It does some interesting things, and it also helps us with some recursion, which is cool. But like I said, with Yuna's Decision, we have other cards that kind of help us out with that. This is also kind of like a little bit of a bounce spell. If our opponent casts something, we can go ahead and put it on top of their library. Well, we can't, but they can, or on the bottom of their library. But yeah, it's just kind of mana intensive, and you also have to have the right mana up. So it's just a little bit harder to cast.
Yeah, it's also the wording on this card is so weird, right?
Yeah, the wording is awful. I won't lie. It took me like almost 3 minutes to read this one card because I just kept messing up. If you guys want to see it, maybe we'll post it on TikTok or something. I don't know.
uh, but once again, understandable cut. But finally, Steven, we're moving on to this part that you absolutely love, and that's cutting more lands than you add. Once again, we see it here. What are we cutting?
Yeah, so not too bad. I added 4 lands, cut 6, so 2 from the deck. But you know me, I like to risk it for the biscuit. I'm still here for it. But yeah, so first 3 we'll talk about. We have Temple of the False God. I like it in a 100. I think it's pretty good, but once you move up to a 300, you kind of need that faster power. And I think 9.9 times out of 10, if I'm playing a bigger, badder upgrade battle with everyone, Temple of the False God is the first land in my hand
This
every single time.
bad land is bad. Not even good in 100. Surprised you kept it there. I'm just being
I
honest.
I really like this card, and then Myriad Landscape are honestly like I love them. I really do, because when they come in clutch, they come in clutch, man. Oh, don't listen. Play Magic the way you like. Put Temple of the False God in if you like it,
Don't do
but
it.
it's not in this deck. Dump it. Yeah. Overflowing Basin and Sky Cloud Expanse are getting cut as well. These are kind of like some filter lands. You can pay 1 into both, and they'll tap for either a green or a blue, or a white and a blue. Like I said earlier, the color pie in this deck is primarily green and white. So I did keep that filter land in just in case. But these two, they're getting out of here.
I'd cut that other filter land if you're looking for a land swap next.
Yes. Buy a $30 starting town if you got the budget and throw that in its place. And then the last 3 lands I'm getting rid of are going to be Temple of Enlightenment, Temple of Mystery, Temple of Plenty. Uh, again, probably should have removed these from the 100, but here we are now in the 300. All these lands enter tapped. They all scry 1, and they all tap for a specific set of colors. Enlightenment will tap for a white or a blue. Mystery will tap for a blue or a green. And then Plenty will tap for a green or a white. But they're very slow. I want my deck to run fast, so they gotta go.
Comes in tapped, get it gone. All right, Steven. But that does look like the final cuts of the deck. Is that right? Is that your entire upgrade?
Those are going to be the final cuts of the deck.
All right, Steven. But the question is, it's a $300 upgrade, obviously. So with that $300 in mind, how much money did you actually spend adding all of the cards to the deck?
Yep. So after everything is said and done at the time of recording, obviously prices always fluctuate, whether it's up or down. From the 100 to the 300, now we are at a total of $299 and 77 cents. So saving you guys almost a quarter, maybe.
Just coming right underneath budget. Love to see that. And like you mentioned, this is still early on in the recording. This is before the set comes out, so prices could fluctuate at all times. Who knows if you're watching this in the year in the future? Does all these prices still remain the same? Comment down below. Maybe they're different. Hello, future. You, I guess.
Yeah, I'll set a calendar invite for June 10th, 2026.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll rewatch this together.
Okay, great idea. But that is going to do it. Steven, one more question before we wrap things up. Now that you've upgraded the deck, you've played around with it a bunch, how do you feel about Tidus and the counter Blitz deck as a whole?
Yeah, I don't really play counter decks that often. It's not really like my jam, my thing. It's kind of hard for me to think about it, but to be honest, I've watched you play enough +1/+1 counter decks that this was kind of easy for me. Just threw in a lot of good cards. But the additions to this deck really make it hum. You are able to build quite a board state that is terrifying and will terrify your opponents to want to swing at you. But even if they do swing at you, what are they going to do? Attack you with their 6/6 and you have a 45/45? Bring it. I welcome the challenge.
Bring it on. Yeah, I'm kind of terrified of what you've done to the deck. Like you said, you don't play counters, but I do, and I like what you've done here. So, yeah, you at home, you don't want to miss when we battle these against each other. It's going to be one heck of a battle. But yeah, stay subscribed if you haven't done so already, and like this video if you haven't done that either. Comment down below. What do you guys think of these additions? Maybe there's an addition that Steven missed. that you would like him to know about. Maybe there's a cut that you disagree with. Always interested to hear guys' opinions. You guys make us better deck builders. So, also in the description, you will find links to not only this Moxfield link, so you can go and play test it yourself. You can go and check out all of our social media accounts. Follow us on those as well. And on the screen right now, those are all of our Patreon subscribers. Once again, thank you guys for your added support. If you guys wanted to see what they're seeing, which is not here on YouTube, including some exclusive content and some early content like the $300 upgrade to Yuna, it's over there on Patreon right now. So go check that out in the link in the description and consider subscribing. But a very special shout out to our Gains Indestructible tier, starting with Aaron Hill,
Aaron Martin,
Brian Ganella,
Terrell Tripp,
Demarion Turner,
Dr. Rome,
Jimmy Ward,
Kevo,
Larry Killian,
Thrifty, PSGR,
and William Colombo. You guys are awesome. Appreciate all of you. And until the next video, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Do you guys like mill decks?